So I'm sure at this point we've all at least heard of Marvel's newest Disney Plus hero, Moon Knight, the all-white Batman. But in case you didn't, let me catch you up. So Moon Knight follows Stephen Grant, played by Oscar Isaac, and he's a mild-mannered gift shop employee who suffers from these random blackouts. And one day, he discovers he shares a body with another personality, a mercenary named Marc Spector, who pledged his life to an Egyptian bird god named Khonshu for saving his life. And as their enemies close in on them, they must learn to trust each other as they go on this journey to stop this evil cult leader from unleashing a banished god on the world. Or maybe it's all in his head. And that's basically the entire show. I'm not really here to talk about the entire show. What I will say about this show, it is a cut above the usual Marvel shows, but it still follows that same Marvel formula. What's the Marvel formula, you may be asking? Tell me if you heard this one before. You have an exciting or captivating opening, then you have the introduction of a villain that may not come off as a villain, then you have the emotional episode where the truth is revealed, and finally you have the episode where the hero comes to terms with who they really are. Original? Yeah. But like I said, I'm not here to talk about the entire show. I'm just really here to talk about this one episode in particular that I feel makes the entire show just elevated to another level. And that would be episode 5, titled Asylum. Now, this episode tackles some pretty heavy topics, and I'm talking the death of a child, a parent's resentment due to the death of a child, the trauma of a parent's resentment due to the death of that child, and unhealthy ways of processing grief. And of course, you have DID. So let's get into it.
Like a butterfly, sting like a bee. My name's Stephen with a V.
So this episode starts with what seems to be Stephen or Marc sitting in Arrow's office, but something seems off. He's wearing a bandage on his nose and his accent's different. Not really Stephen's, not really Marc's. It's very subtle, but I noticed it.
Never felt so good.
Then a little sedation happens, and then we're back with Stephen and Marc screaming at the hippo lady, and I get it. Because looking at this thing, my brain would just refuse to understand what's happening. Once everyone is calm, we find out that they're dead. But not dead, but the special kind of dead that allows you to change where you end up going for the rest of eternity. So basically like a purgatory, but in this case, it's the form of an insane asylum. Why is it an insane asylum? According to this show, it's basically they end up in the purgatory that they believe in, and their brain doesn't exactly comprehend where they are, so they form what they are familiar with. But knowing where they are, it leads our two protagonists on this quest to make peace with their past in order to balance their scales to make it into the afterlife. Or in this case, it would be called the Field of Reeds. But if they don't, they will basically be frozen in the sands of ice or whatever. It's not too, I didn't really care. But what makes this interesting is the fact that up until this point, we know that Stephen and Marc are two people sharing the same body. And it's not really clear who's in control. But now they're two separate people in two separate bodies, and we're gonna explore their past. Like, for example, the amount of people that Marc has killed. And according to Marc, he's only killed the people who deserved it. Now, Stephen looks around and he discovers there's a little boy, and he's also dead, leaving Stephen with more distrust for Marc. Now, as Stephen chases the kid and Marc chases Stephen, Marc tries to lead Stephen to a different room, like the room where he met Khonshu. And on that night, Marc was not willing to kill innocent people, which caused him to be left for dead by his own crew. We see Marc dragging himself to Khonshu's tomb, and as he's about to end his own life, Khonshu starts speaking to him, and he makes him an offer. Now, Stephen notices just how easily Marc was manipulated at that time, but at the same time, Marc was on the brink of death, and he pledged himself to become the Moon Knight. So, in a way, if Marc didn't do that, they wouldn't be where they are right now. Or I guess they would, because they would have been dead then, and they're dead now. But anyway, moving on. Stephen notices that the scales still are imbalanced, so he wants to know more about the kid, and he decides to go on this solo mission through his childhood, or should I say, Marc's childhood. Now, things slowly start getting pieced together when we see Stephen sees his younger self at this party, but he can't really remember that day. We find out that Stephen, or Marc, had a younger brother, and they both shared the love for this show, which was basically like a Indiana Jones ripoff, and the main character was named Dr. Stephen Grant. On this day, Marc or Stephen and his younger brother went to play in this cave, but then it suddenly started to rain. Stephen, still not familiar with this day, follows the little boys, and he tries to yell for them to, come back and, warn them of the danger, but at this point, it's just a memory. So he is just the watcher at this point. We don't really see what happens, but it's basically implied that Steven's younger brother slipped and drowned, and Steven was unable to save him. Or should I say Marc was unable to save him. And then we're brought to a funeral, and we see the beginning of Marc's torments. And we just see Marc's mom hates him for what happened to his brother. And again, this kid's like 8 or 9, and this happens for his entire life. And, this is just like every day, where, you're basically being reminded or being beat by your mom, and you see her just transform into this person you don't even recognize anymore. And I'm so happy that Marvel highlighted this, because Marvel's parent track record has always been, at this point, painting the father figure in a bad light. And I'm just saying, it's about time we get some diversity with the moms. Now, at this point, Marc is finally caught up with Steven, and Marc and Steven are looking at his younger self in the room, and Steven at this point still doesn't remember, but he does remember the room that he grew up in. Marc is very stoic, and he's looking at his younger self, and then we're just hearing on the other side his mother just banging on the door, begging to be let in. And then we see the fear of young Marc's eyes, and again, the directing in this part is so beautiful, because as we hear the banging on the door, we just hear this little kid, just screaming and repeating to himself, "That's not my mom. That's not my mom." As the banging gets louder, we're finally introduced to the birth of Steven Grant, or the Steven Grant personality. And as Steven's coming to terms with the fact that he's not real and he was made up, we're seeing Marc basically kind of force him out the room. And then in the background, we're seeing Marc's mom beat young Steven. But the thing is about that, Steven doesn't remember the abuse. Most people believe that maybe it's the third personality, Jake Lockley, and Steven was actually the last personality that was created. But that's not yet confirmed, and it's not, as of recording, it's not been confirmed for a season 2, so this is all speculation at this point. But anyway, it's revealed while they're talking that Marc's mom, or Steven's mom, is actually dead, and on the day of her funeral, Marc stood outside of his mother's funeral. And I feel at this point, in my opinion, Marc's just feeling, one, relieved that the woman who tormented him his entire life is finally gone. But at the same time, he's probably feeling resentful because his mother couldn't have been the mom that he wanted her to be. And it's expressed perfectly while he's walking down the street, and he just starts to break down. And again, the transformation from Marc to Steven is just seamless. Of course, you have that little eye roll, and you just see Steven just get up from the street, not knowing where he is. The first thing he does is call his mom and just says he must have blacked out again. But then it just begs the question. We never actually see Steven's mom. We don't know who Steven's mom is. Who was he talking to on the other line of that phone? If you don't know, I don't know either, I'll be honest. Let me know in the comments if you do know. But moving on, Steven and Marc are slowly just coming to that understanding, and they begin to work together. But it seems that they're too late, because the asylum that's on the boat being steered by the hippo lady is currently under attack by other unbalanced souls. And in a moment where it seems that Marc is going to get taken overboard, Steven sacrifices himself to save Marc. And again, another heartbreaking moment where you see them calling out for each other, and Steven tries to catch up by running, and then he's slowly frozen in his tracks while he's just, again, trying to scream for Marc. Marc demands that the boat get turned around, but in the moment that Steven fell off the boat, Marc's scales became balanced, and instantly he's transported into the field of reeds, and then the episode ends. Now, after watching the full series, it's left pretty open-ended, and I doubt this is the last time we'll ever see this character. With how we leave Marc and Steven, it looks like maybe they may have to confront the Jake Lockley character and maybe fill in some more gaps in their lives, but that's yet to be seen or confirmed. But yeah, in summary, what I can say is I love this episode of Moon Knight. I honestly expected the entire series to be more of like this episode, like maybe if the entire series took place in the asylums and everything else was basically just mentioned in conversation or in passing dialogue. But I do hope we do get more projects like this in the future, because don't get me wrong, I love me the cosmic MCU, but adding a psychological horror twist to a street level character is really what I like to see more of. So I'm waiting on you, Daredevil. But I will leave this video with a question. What's the next street level character that you think deserves Disney Plus treatment? For me, I would love to see a Spider-Man Life Story limited series. But that's just me, or maybe that's just my next video idea. Either way, I've been Gerald, and until we meet again, bye.